Such a great entry, Luvik. And I just wanted to say I read your little introduction to your manuscript, and I want to say you're very welcome. I'm so glad that my resources have been helpful to you, and that you found some kind of positive mentorship in what I have to offer. And yeah, your sentiments were just extremely kind and very warm, and I really do appreciate it, especially with what I've been going on for the past couple of years. And I hope that you are still out there in a receptive mood for this evaluation, and it hasn't been too long for this to be useful. I I really love the clarity and the organization of your score. There are a bunch of things that we can work on and talk about just in some basics. Let's start with that. Let's start a little bit with score layout and with certain standards that you'll see in a full orchestral score for you to think about. Okay, because I think that'd be really, really helpful to you before we start everything. And just one other thing I wanted to say is that it's so you entered at the dotted brev level and supported at a really generous, it's a very generous level to be supporting the challenge and the channel, and yet you only submitted about half of the first movement, and there's extremely kind of you. If you'd only planned to do a short amount, but still donate at a higher level, than that was very kind of you. All right, so let's start off with the beginning. Just a couple little things. To flauti would be like flauto is singular. Flauti, it would be the plural in Italian. So just fix this in your mind, because there will be a bit of feedback later coming your way about this, right? So two flutes, two oboes, two clarinets, two bassoons, and then here you say horns in E flat. So it's the assumption is that there are two of them, right? So there are two horns here. However, like if we jump ahead here, there are places where it seems to imply that there are four horns, right? I think there's right in here we see four parts within the horns. So we don't really know like how many horns there are here. And it just says horns. It doesn't say whether there are two, which is implied just by the two staves, or whether there are two total, or there are four, or whatever. And then violin 1, 2, violas, cellos, and so on. So there's kind of like there's a little bit of difference between English and Italian things. So what I would say is like just if English is your first language, or your main language when it comes to music, just use that. Timpani, that's fine. That's just that's a universal one. But I just say two bassoons, two clarinets, two oboes, two flutes. Don't worry about getting fancy with it. You'll be fine. I thought it was very cool that you scored the whole thing in A flat. Right, it was just a much brighter key than the original F or G. Just yanking everything up quite a bit. And and that was all fine. Okay, so now let's talk about the next basic scoring thing. All right, now if you tell me that this is two flutes and two oboes and so on, two bassoons, and you write a single note, you have to tell me who is playing this. All right. Now some people have written A1, right, which is not a thing, right? So either write number 1, right, 1 period, or 2 period, to let us know whether it's the first or second player, or write A2, A2, right, which means both playing the same single line at once. Okay, so you have to tell me how many flutes are being played here, and which person it is if it's only one flute player. Same thing here. If these are four horns in E flat, then you have to tell me. Yes, here you say optional solo 1. So that's great right there. You have Roman numeral 1. Roman numerals are a little bit old-fashioned. I used to use them myself for a while. I kind of got bored with them, and now I kind of have joined the 21st century. Just use the Arabic number 1 with a period after it. Okay. you will have to tell us when you go to two parts whether it's divisi or non-divisi here in this, with the flats and the everything. I would have this be divisi. Okay. And then here you have like the optional solo. Then they have the cellos. Maybe one way to do this would be to have your horn part in mini notes, like have it in like a smaller note heads and beams and everything else, and dynamic sign, and then just above say substitute for solo cello, right, in small print, and then that lets everybody know, the player and the conductor and everything else, what to expect. Okay, so those are just like those are my basics. There are some places here where I think you needed to proofread certain changes of clef. I actually reformatted your score a little bit, so some of this is my fault. I think this is supposed to be a bass clef, and I apologize. I think that I did a little bit of cutting and pasting and putting different score images together. So that's on me. Yeah, see, so here this should have been a bass clef. So I apologize to everybody out there. Makes me want to just stop this whole recording and go back and fix it and start everything all over again. But that's all right. I think people will get it. Okay, so now that we have gone through all of those little things, I'm giving you extra time because you deserve it. Like, you supported it such a high level, and your score is so short. So we're just going to, I'm going to give you as much as I possibly can with this. So we're starting off here with violas, cellos. You've got your cello solo below the violas, right? This sort of harmonizing from above on the cellos, and then of course, like, we've got this sort of pedal tone here, basses and cellos. I think you forgot to tie the A above, but okay. But I think that if this is a solo above, one single cello playing a solo, and this is the rest of the cellos, gli altri, which you would have to write below, GLIALTRI, gli altri. That means the rest, or the everybody else. So yeah, I think you just need one little A at the bottom here in your double basses, and then just this A here in the cellos, and you don't need this top A here. Now, if you were intending this to be repeated notes, it really should be a separate. It should be a separate stem. It should be first voice above and second voice below. Do you know what I mean by that? So, like, the stems would be pointing up for these upper A's and the down for the lower A's, right? And now, one last little comment I'm going to make is, I think you are too good of an orchestrator. Even though you might think of yourself as a developing orchestrator and everything else, you are too good of an orchestrator to have a separate dynamic marking on every staff, right? Here we got pianissimo here, mezzo forte, mezzo piano, mezzo forte, piano, right? We've got a bunch of different things. Again, I want you to think about something, okay, Luvik? I want you to imagine that you are the flute player. You're sitting way far away from the strings, and you've got a P marked on your part, right? And you are getting ready to play, and then you sort of hear the violas playing a bit mezzo forte-ish, and you hear the cello solo played about, or sort of mezzo piano-ish, and then mezzo forte-ish on this solo, or maybe the horn solo, or whatever. And you're thinking, that is a really loud version of piano. But I guess, if the rest of the orchestra is playing a bit louder, maybe I should play louder too. Do you see the problem there? Then there are just built-in registral weaknesses and strengths as well, right? So, for instance, here, you absolutely do not need at all to write this at a lower level than the rest because it's already really soft, right? That like a flute on its lowest middle C, right? There's this low middle C is going to be, it's going to blend right in with the violas. Even if it were marked mezzo forte, it would blend right in with the violas and you could barely hear it, right? And then going up to this B flat here, this will still just be, adding a little bit of color above the violas, and a lot of the tone will get absorbed. B flat, I should say, and then D flat here will also get absorbed into the cello solo or the horn solo, right? Now here you mark horns in E flat. All right, so so if you need to copy paste, like maybe double click on the name and then grab the flat and drop it onto the B, right? That's one way. Or there's I think this is this Dorico or maybe MuseScore or something. Anyway, so look, your horn should be an F, right? If these are concert horns, E flat horns would be more of a band thing, okay? If they were like how the way that they're written here, they're written as fully chromatic horns because like these are pitches that would not appear in a normal like in a normal natural horn part, right? So you're better off just scoring your horns in F, right? Just like you don't need to be an E flat to accommodate the flats. There's nothing about your part that is all that intricate or difficult in terms of its pitches, right? So just your horn should be an F. Okay, so because like you're not obviously you're not sticking to any particular standards of having natural horn in this, correct? So you should just go with the standard concert F horn. Okay, and I think that like either cello or horn would be good. I think that if you wanted to have a more Beethoven kind of a voice, I think that horn is better. Actually, I think it just makes a whole lot more sense. But it will suck up any color that you've got in your flute, right? So your flute part here is possibly just completely, unnecessary, right? In a situation like this, you really, you would want to make sure that you had a fermata over the over all of these notes, that there was like maybe a quarter rest in each of these half bars here, before the split, and then here once again should a quarter rest in each of these blank bars, right? So yeah, so watch out for that. Okay, all right, so now now that we've talked about all that stuff, let's talk about the evaluation criteria. Does this entry or does this intro set the mood effectively? I feel that it does, and I really like the slurring that you've got here. Like you don't slur over any repeated notes. You're being very conscious, right? And I'm not so sure that you need to go ta 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 ta. Maybe this could be slurred too, ta ta. Right? Always like sing things to yourself and sing like ta or da, as like where the person tongues. Ta 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 or ta 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 is how you've got it, right? So sometimes singing that to yourself, you go, oh no, oh that's wrong. It should be ta. Or you might be thinking, oh, I'm wrong and Thomas is wrong. Maybe it should be ta 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 ta. Or ta 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 ta. Right? There's a bunch of different ways to slur it that have different kinds of nuances, different types of meanings. By you just move the slur over a couple of notes or whatever, and you get a different meaning. So anyhow, however you do it, whether it's cello or horn, the slurs are nice. I like how the violas are scored as well. And once again, this should be a divisi over this, right, to let us know. And then here, solo in glialtri, you do not have to have a capitalized S for the word solo. Just have a normal S, okay? All right, so I feel that this really does, like, as I think in terms of the horn solo, I think the horn solo sets the mood beautifully effectively for what follows, right? Like, having the melody in the oboe, and then the leggermente passage here, and so on. Like, I just feel that this is a great introduction to that. I think the cello solo is less effective in setting the mood for this, because you would think that there would be more strings after the cello solo. It's just like I feel that would be more appropriate. Okay, so or just like have more of a stylistic kind of a logic. Okay, now so we've talked about all of the issues that there are here, except for one last one. You don't need to mark eighth note equals 72, right? So like you're imagining that the conductor is going to be conducting the half beat, right? They're going to be going 1 and 2 and, almost as if it were 4/4 time, right? 4 beats per measure, or 4/8 time, I should say. So that is, even at a very, very slow speed, which would be 36 beats per minute, right? 36 quarter notes per minute. They can still, like, any decent section player should be able to count that and get the middle of the bar and the 16th notes and everything just absolutely perfectly in time. They're working with a good conductor. If they're a good player, they're used to playing stuff that's even slower than this and getting all of the little subdivisions perfectly, okay? So you do not need to mark the half beat, right? Okay. So, and then now here you are giving me a half note equals 63, right? So in other words, 126 quarter notes per minute. If you don't put a slash here, then this half note equals is meaningless, right? So you should only say half note equals if it's cut time, right? So C with a slash through it, and that what that means is that the conductor will be conducting by the half bar, right? So they'll be going, so after the upbeat, they'll be going like down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, and that just seems to me really slow, right? Because you want the conductor to convey the beat and the this is allegro monon troppo, right? It has got to have like some, it can be beautiful and placid, but it has to have some kick to it, right? So you really have to think, 4 and 1, or 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 yanda, right? So just like this has to be, you're giving the players the idea that this is in cut time, and then you're marking that it's in common time. All right, so don't give us the half note in the tempo unless you mean cut time, and you don't, right? So okay, so now the next question is, does the melody start with elegance? I mean, I think it does. I really like this, ba, in the oboe, first oboe. Ta, it's really, really nice. And okay, so here's the problem though, is who's this guy? Is this the first oboe player? Is this the second oboe player? Is it both oboe players? If you're thinking of marking this a duet, like two oboists sharing the same note, don't, because the problem with having two woodwind players play the same exact pitch is that you get less intimacy, right? There you have the two players playing the same thing, so they have to control their vibrato. They have to control any kind of variation of nuance or anything. They have to lock together, and you end up with a kind of a more trumpet-like sound than an oboe sound. Like, it's less individually expressive, right? So let's assume that you are going to score this as a single oboe player. Like, so then we'd have to write the number 1 with a period after it, right? And then this would have to be in second voice when this comes in, right? So this would be stem up, and that would be stem down, and then there would be a little rest at the end for the end of this note, right? And then it would go back to first player. All right, and then the same thing is true here. So this, which player is this? Is this the first player, the second player? It would make more sense for this to be the second player, right? So there would be a little rest above here for the first voice. First voice would have a rest. Second voice would have would get the notes, right? So, and here you've got this octave, bum bum, and then you have the first clarinet doubling what's going on in the first oboe or the solo oboe, and then here we have this really nice chord, the way you've realized the harmony in the piano. And then that just leads to this really lovely opening out of this. And then, is there a natural transition to octaves? I would say more or less. Yeah, I mean, I don't really see any huge problems in here. But, once again, you have to tell us whether or not this is a due or like if you're just going to go to a single clarinet. Be aware that if you go a due with your clarinets, there will be phasing, like this sort of a sound of like you will really be able to hear that it is two instruments, and there will be a slight, just because they are instruments without any vibrato, and they have a very thin kind of a tone compared to the very warm, rich sound of an oboe. They have a much like narrower tone. Then like that narrowness of tone means that you'll hear both instruments playing together, and if you're not doubling this with like one of the violins or violas or whatever, or one of these groups, then you'll really be able to hear those standing out. Now, if you have a due clarinets doubling violas or second violins or whatever, then that all goes away because the richness of the strings swallows up the difference in timbre, difference in intonation. Now, there are some clarinet players who can nail their intonation with each other, like with their stand partner, and they can get it almost phaseless, right? It's amazing. I've heard it once or twice, but yeah, it still is a quantity. Now, let's talk about like something else. Why does the oboe player have to be fortissimo, and the clarinet have to be forte, and then this mezzo piano and this pianissimo, right? Couldn't everything just be piano dolce? Seriously, like, so just imagine, so here's our oboe, piano dolce, da 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 da, then a little bit of crescendo here, da 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 da, right? Okay, now here's the oboe player fortissimo. Da 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 da. And then this has got a crescendo in it. Da 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 da. Right, and then there's more fortissimo. Da 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 da. Like, why do we have to get so big so fast? Why can't everything just be like a beautiful walk in the country? Do you know what I mean? Why can't this whole thing start off piano? Like everybody playing piano, just nicely balancing with each other. And then this is piano dolce, like a sweet, sweet piano. Like Beethoven, he has this thought, I'm going to go walk out to that tavern, my favorite tavern out at the edge of town. It's got this little band and they play these little folk tunes, and I'm going to walk around Vienna and I'm going to take this shortcut that takes me through the countryside. Ah, that's a wonderful idea. And so he steps out his door, and he's feeling great, right? He's feeling placid. He's looking at the scenery. It's beautiful. He can see the countryside. Why does it need to be loud and boisterous and over the top? Why can't it just be nice and relaxed and beautiful, right? And then when he gets to here, it's like a joke, right? Like I sort of told before, like, maybe he sees a guy who's like his shoe is starting to fall off, right? Like the sole of the shoe is falling off, and Beethoven sort of goes over to him and says, hello, my old soldier fellow, how about if I give you a florin and you go fix that shoe? And the guy looks at him right in the eye and says, what shoe? Right, so it's a little bit, and Beethoven chuckles to himself, right? So that's just a little bit of humor, the country folk, they can be very funny, right? So just, why can't this just be more relaxed? I feel like your dynamics are just, and also, what's going on here in these strings at piano? Who can hear a single note they're playing with these winds screaming so loudly, right? Who can hear the cellos playing and these pianissimo double basses playing when when these winds are so loud? Why doesn't everybody just play softly, right? Then this would be really great, I think. This would be, it would also be cool if this were slurred all together. Da, 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 da. And then this were slurred as a group under under one breath as portato. Ah, ah, ah. And then here, mezzo staccato. That makes perfect sense. You don't need this. It's like choose one or the other. Either have a slur over it or just have separate slurs, right? And you might be thinking, oh, well, this is like a phrase mark when I'm sort of, but that's like piano thinking or harp thinking, right? Just tell the player where you want them to breathe, where you want them to tongue and then release and then tongue again, right? Okay. So if you want the bassoonist to match what's going on in the other winds, then just slur it the same and don't worry about it, okay? Now, one thing that you could do here, I mean, I really love the way that these double basses are playing here. These could have been pizzicato, they could have been portamento, or portamento, yeah, they could have been portato, sorry. And you could have had elements of what's going on in the, like the cellos are doubling somewhat what's happening in the bassoons. And you have this big, beautiful slur over this whole thing here. Yeah, this might be something that would be easier to like split up into two, like to slur it by the beam group. So da, ta. And then the same thing here. There's no need to go ta, 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 ta. It has a sort of a galloping kind of a sound. What if it were like just slur to the beam group? Ta, 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 ta. Right? So yeah, so just reconsider a few things in here. I mean, it's a beautiful idea. It's just just need to adjust it a little bit. So I would say, with some of those adjustments or something similar, I would say that's a natural flow. You have the elements of what would make a natural flow here. It just needs to have a little bit of adjusting. Do you expand without clogging up? Yes, you do. You keep it beautifully simple, right? All right, so now we get to leggermente. We need to know who these soloists are. Is this the first flute? Right, first bassoon, first oboe, right? What's going on here? And this is interesting. I have in my evaluation criteria, I have the questions, does this contrast with the theme? Yes, it does, right? So now we finally hear solo flute or flute as a featured line, right? And, it's perfectly fine to slur over this whole thing. Tom. And then here, what I would do here with this is very difficult to slur up and then end up on the bottom note for bassoon in this register, right? So, or practically any, right? So it would be better to slur up and then have this note here just as a separate, especially since it's tenuto staccato, right? Same thing here. So just slur up, have the slur end at the top, and then have a separately tongued note here. And maybe that would be the same thing. It would also be a better way of featuring, the end of each little fragment, right? Ta, 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 ta. And this is great, too, because I ask whether or not there will be a contrast between the lines, and there is. You're going from flute to oboe, and that makes a lot of sense. It's really great. And then bassoon each time. Question was, harmonic support needed? You add just a little bit of gentle support down here. Once again, I don't think there's any need for octaves in the double basses. I think it's better just to have like the lowest notes of these octaves in the double basses, and then just the cellos an octave above that, right? So I think that all works great. And then but like, look, do you need to be fortissimo here and piano there? And you don't at all. Just leave everything piano, right? Or maybe you could take it up to mezzo piano, right? Maybe warm things up a little bit. And you don't need the fortissimo here at the beginning of this clarinet line. You just you're the building blocks, the basic elements of the score that you have are great. Just some of the slurs, some of the dynamics, some of the phrasing, some of that just needs to be adjusted a bit. Okay, now the next part, is there an emphatic color of line? I mean, there is. You actually have, like, I think this is supposed to be a single clarinet. So this is really going to be a bit of a clarinet solo. Da. Okay, and with this, I would recommend breaking the slur and go ta ta, because the way that it is, the only note that is actually playing an articulation on the downbeat are these double basses here, right? So yeah, and once again, you really don't need these top notes because they are already being played by cellos, right? And here you have like, you might think, well, I want one of these E's to continue on, so I would just say, just have this E covered by divisi cellos, right? So just have one group playing the E going forwards and the other one slurring upwards to the D flat, right? Just along with your violas, right? And this is kind of nice the way you kind of come in and you are adding harmonic density over the top. It's very small, right? There's just, but I would say like emphatic color of line. I mean, you can make the clarinet very emphatic if it's playing fortissimo, right? Maybe the way that you could score this is like everybody starts off from a mezzo piano that we had before. Just make everybody mezzo piano from the Leggermente, and then maybe the solo clarinet could be mezzo forte, right? And then everything pushing towards the next bar. Okay, and then, but like here's the thing, like, all right, so you're starting fortissimo in these parts, and you're pushing forwards, and then you're suddenly mezzo forte. What's the Italian word for suddenly? Subito, right? So subito mezzo forte, right? So the same thing with this. So if let's say you're pushing forwards, then, and I would say just make everything mezzo forte, right? Make it all the same dynamic. There's no need for your winds to be louder than your strings here, right? And there's no need for these top three notes to be played by the cellos and not by the violas, right? Why can't these three notes be played by the violas? They're just standing around. Here you're giving all these notes to your cellos, right? I would almost say that you could just have your double basses going A flat, E flat, A flat, right? And then having this A given to the cellos divisi, right? So I would say go play an A flat third and then a B flat fourth, right? And then just end on a single A, unison. So whenever you get to the end of a divisi section, you write UNIS period for unis, right? And then divisi would be DIV period. No capital letters, please. You're saying hard mallets. I would say wood mallets. Okay? They have this really wonderful, punchy sound. Da, da. There's a slight disconnect here, and I'll tell you what it is. Okay? You have this viola part reaching upwards, right? And it's up on a B flat here above the staff. And you have your clarinet scooting down here and then walking up to an A flat. All right? And now we just have all of this density right on this A flat. Yeah, so you just suddenly have all of this thickness, but you don't have any more violas, right? So that's another strong argument to sort of have the violas take some of this, right? And I would say even having maybe the second violins come in to sort of help finish up what the violas were doing and thicken this up a little bit. So I think that there is just to follow on from what you had before. I think you just really do need more strings here on this first bar, but this is really lovely. Bum, bum, just like a lot of punch here. Be careful about writing very low, close intervals on double basses. The problem is that the lower you go, the more that the low notes are just about single overtones. There are low pitches that underline the harmony above, and they are so rich in their overtones that when you score things like this that are covered by a lot of harmony above, then you just really there's a lot of interference and a lot of gruffness and a lot of scrunch to the sound. So it'd be better for you just to have like a low A flat, low D flat. Do you know what I mean? Okay. But these could be intervals without any problem. I might want to put the D flat on top here. I think that would work better. But I mean, it's. I almost feel like you need to simplify what's going on down here because of just the impact of the timpani, right? So the more that you throw in these low intervals and so on, and the more you have these straight, just basic tones here on your timpani, I just think the more you need to have these low strings or whatever low parts there are that are below the middle of the staff should really be compensate or should be conspiring with a timpani more than they should be like playing these very low harmonies. But like the stuff that's higher is nice. This would be great as portato here. Like to just add tenuto marks, and then you get like a almost a sobbing or like a pulsing kind of a sound. You know what I mean? And that goes really, really well together with the slurs above. As above. And it all sort of combines together in the mind of the listener. So the same thing here. Like if you have repeated notes in one of the parts, those should be, you should split the stems. These should be pointing down. The lower part should be pointing down. This should be a unison here. And then any notes which repeat should be on a stem pointing up in first voice with and also as portato, right? So the tenuto mark with a slur over it, and of course a slur under the second voice stems. Now you can slur over repeated notes. It's sort of a semi-portato, right? But I think you should just really be clear about it, and especially this kind of scoring, right? Just help the player. And this is really like, and here you're going divisi, like you have 3 parts here. So I would say div in 3. But do you need 3 parts here? Okay, let's take another look at this. Here you've got this chord here, right? You've got like your 6-3 chord, and here you've got a 6-4 chord way up above. Now, these 2 notes here are duplicated by the second violins. Why couldn't you just do this? Have this be a B flat third, right? Cut this note on top, and then cut this note on the bottom, right? Because it's already played by the violas. Then have this G here and the B flat above it, right? And then cut this B flat in the first violins because it's already played by other instruments, and then just have the E flat thirds above, right? Then you've got all of your notes all played with much more security and much more intensity by other instruments, rather than just giving these triads to these other players, right? Okay, all right. So I just really liked the way that this material was dealt with, though. See, like with some fixes, just like some of the fixes that I'm suggesting, I think that it would be really nice. Okay, and that leads us to this next part here. This is like the beginning of the B section. Okay, and my comment here is fresh new color. I mean, yes and no, right? Because you just had a big clarinet solo, right? You had a clarinet solo here. And now you have another clarinet solo. Maybe one of these, like maybe the thing before could be oboe, or this could be oboe and the thing before could stay clarinet, right? So do we need a fresh color in here? I think we do, right? Or maybe this could be flute, right? Okay, fresh new color, complementary timbre. I do think that the oboes doubled by violas underneath the clarinet is really a great sound. And I think that you should not have stopped doubling your oboes. Why did you stop doubling your oboes here? You should have left that in. I think it would have been really strong. And then had you kept your violas in the game, it would be perfectly natural to continue on with them, with the bassoon doubling and everything else, right? So like I think that just you missed a chance there, I think, by not having the violas continue on. I mean, I can see the logic. You wanted to sort of have the string sound to be more, have the stuff missing right in here, so that the strings might sound a little bit more like unique or like a fresh color here with these violins. Okay. All right, so that takes care of the beginning of the B section, right? Okay, so now we're getting into this whole area here. So all right, so you've got some problems here. You can't have all these gaps and these rests with a big slur over it, right? Like these should just be slurred. Each one of these groups should be slurred, right? Rather than the rather than just putting a slur over things that have rest gaps in it. It's very messy. All right, so it's better for you to have these individually slurred each one. Okay, now let's see the efficacy of them. All right, so the problem with this is you're having your firsts. Oh, by the way, this needs to be violins 1 and 2, right? Or you could just get rid of the word violins and just have 1 and 2 there. Everybody knows that that's 1 stands for firsts, 2 stands for seconds. So you don't need violins, right? Just you can get rid of that word and just have 1 here and 2 there. Okay. All right, so getting back to this. So this is not a very good dovetailing spot, but this is a good dovetailing spot. So halfway through the middle of the beat is way better. So just think, like, what are the second violins doing? They're going da 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 da, right? Da 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 da. But what are the first violins doing? They're going da 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 da. Do you see what I mean? So it's much more frenetic for them. What if instead of dovetailing here across 2 beats and then leaving a gap there, what if you cut this note and then had this F flat right here just repeated? Right, so now you have da 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 da. Way better, right? So just get rid of the first note and then move and then just grab this note to dovetail, and that way you've got dovetailing point is at the beginning and the end of each group, right? Rather than going rest da 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 rest da 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 rest da da da. I find that this is the most treacherous way of dovetailing phrases back and forth, is to come in on the note right after the first rest, the first semiquaver rest, or the first 16th note rest. It's really it's nerve-wracking for the player because it doesn't have because you're coming in just right before the offbeat. So just have them come in on the offbeat, which is a solid place, and then dovetail at the beginning of the next thing, and then they can leave this as a rest, right? And it's just much more natural. Okay, so if you just make those fixes, then I would say that the dovetailing here is just perfect, right? Now here you've got, you're saying solo, and you're saying, oh, parentheses in the flute above, and here, there is no problem, especially marked at fortissimo, which doesn't need to be. And if this is mezzo piano, this should be mezzo piano, right? And it can be mezzo piano all the way to F, and these D's and everything else, this is all totally playable in the top note, right? So you don't need the parentheses with the little guy below, right? Just have it be the top notes. That's fine. And then it really works as bum ba ba da 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 da. Yeah, and don't slur across a rest like this, right? And then what I think, I think you're better off just I don't think you even need any rests here. I think that everything could just be separate, da 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 da. You know what I mean? I think that it can all be just not slurred at all. And then the same thing here. This could just all be staccato, and then it would work. It would just really punch up these patterns really nicely, right? Yeah. Now this gets really difficult to read. I guess we are. Here you're saying that it's D horn. I think you forgot to change this to E flat horn. But I mean, it should just really be F horn. Since we're reading in C, though, this should be written in bass clef, these really, really low notes. And then, once again, do you really need these thirds, right? If you've got some of these pitches expressed in other instruments, then maybe you don't need all of the pitches that you're asking for, right? And this is just incredibly hard. This should be in bass clef if this is a C chord, right? In fact, I would put them both in bass clef just to help the conductor with their reading. And once again, I apologize. This should be a bass clef. I think that was my screw up. Yeah. See, I think I joined some of these pages together. I sort of. Yeah, I think I did. I don't know. Maybe it was you, Luvik. Maybe I'm just messing this all up. Maybe my memory is not so good on this. Anyhow. Yeah, so I like this ba da 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 So you know what? This would be really good for you to put into the horn parts, right? To have like going stopped, open, stopped, open, stopped, open. And same thing here, right? And this is a little strange the way you've got a note on the top which looks like a tie, and then you got a note at the bottom which just looks like it's a slur, right? But there is no tie at the top, but there's something at the top. Is that a tie or a slur? It looks like a slur. All right, so this is really needs to be organized and reformatted better, right? I would have two separate voices. I would have either have a whole note above, right? And essentially, two tied quarter notes, right? Either have a whole note above, or have like portato above, and then I would have like as a first voice, and then in second voice I would have the slurs, right, with the accent. And I think that the only note that really needs to be slurred is like the half step motion. I think the rest of it doesn't really need that much emphasis. Okay, and then okay. You say pizzicato, and then you're marking slurs. All right? Do you really intend that? I don't think you do. And if this is going to be pizzicato, maybe this horn part down here needs to be staccato, right? Okay, so things to think about. All right, so now we're starting to spread out. Thinking ahead to widening the gap. I mean, I think you filled everything in from the beginning, so it's really not a big deal. And then once again, you've got all these thirds and seconds and everything else. You got to make up your mind, right? So just like if you have these pitches, if you have two pitches, maybe it would be better for your first horn to be playing the A, and for your second horn to be playing the G flat, and just forget about playing so low down here. That's what your bassoons are for, right? You have your bassoons up here, kind of in the clarinet register, right? So yeah. Yeah, so this really is tenor clef this time. Yeah, so I just feel like, I feel like you could have had your bassoons helping out your cellos and taking over some of this very, very low horn scoring, and then maybe you could have had both of your horns taking these thirds and seconds, right? And then here you're having a very low trill, and I recommend against that on horn, right? It's just going to be kind of embarrassing sounding, almost like like a raspberry kind of a sound, like a sort of a sound, right? And these are very low trills. Maybe you need more support on this higher F up here, right? So this is F above middle C. Maybe that's what the violas could be trilling there. Just jump up an octave, right? And then because like there's no need for you to support the cellos trilling, right? And then you just really don't need to have your horns trill at all. Yeah, okay, so now we have a little bit more kind of very weird and very difficult timing here. Now, once again, you're starting with a rest and then coming in on the note just before the upbeat, right? Rest, da-da, rest, da-da, rest, da-da. It's just difficult. And then you got your oboe going, so you're going bump, da-da, teet, bump, da-da, teet. So yeah, so Luvik, like I wrote a bunch of stuff cautioning against scattering things around too much, right? And just trying to have patterns that integrate really nicely. And and then I said, oh well, there's some exceptions for some things, for maybe a couple of bars or whatever. And like I think you took me at my word, right? But this is just a little too weird. Okay, so just maybe you could simplify things by having this all be oboe or flute, right? Just having your flute player going bump, ba-bum, 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 right? And then maybe you could have your clarinets going da-da-da, 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 right? Rather than rest, da-da, rest, da-da, rest, da-da, rest, da-da. All right, so this needs to be rethought a little bit. And then you also have a big jump downwards. You got this G6th here, right? And suddenly you have your flutes down here where nobody's going to hear them after playing all these really high notes up here that are so loud. Why not just go with it and just double your violins here with a G6th? Just jack this up an octave. And then you could then just invert this right? You have the E flat on top instead of at the bottom, and then you're doubling your second violins, and then just leave your clarinets where they are, right? Then I think that it will all just you have a big, beautiful, rich chord there. All right, so those are my thoughts on this. So now, let's go ahead to so new quality of tone. Once again, you're choosing to go to a clarinet solo, at the beginning of a new section, right? So we did that here, and we did that here, right? So you have to really think, like, do I always want to go to a clarinet when there's a new thing to say, right? So just maybe spread things around a little bit. Just always try to have it very, very fresh. Now, once again, we need to know, is this the first player? Probably first player, but then you have the second player come in, right? So this needs to be separate voices. So the second player just plays a single note, right? Here and there. Yeah. I mean, no problems with registers or anything. It's all very nice. And this is kind of cool. Bum, 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 bum. Maybe this could be pizzicato too, right? You have a lot of octaves in your double basses where the cellos could be playing, do you know what I mean? So, like, let's say this was pizzicato or arco, it doesn't really matter, but like this could be the cellos on top, right? And then maybe they could both end with B flats, written B flats on the second line, and then just double basses going on. So anyway, so this is really nice. And wow, why do we have fortissimo bassoons in a supporting role to mezzo forte clarinet, right? And mezzo forte oboe. So you get this really, back, this kind of grungy guy in the basement kind of screaming at your clarinet player, nervously trying to be beautiful above, right? So just easy does it, right? Now here, if you were intending this to be like a dovetailing, just dovetail on this note rather than having a unison, right? Because what you'll hear is you'll hear suddenly thick for 2 beats, and then you'll hear a sudden gap as the clarinet drops out. Just have them dovetail here, and it'll be seamless, and you'll go from the clarinet color to the oboe color, right? And then you can do it again here. And it's better to do it that way than to have the to double it and then leave a gap and so on, because you just hear this as a very chunky kind of a unison and then a dropout and so on, especially with clarinets, right? Clarinets and oboes. So yeah, or you could just go like da 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 all on clarinet, and then oboe. Da 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 da. Do you know what I mean? All right, and this is really cool. Bum, bum, bum. Once again, these pitches should be, like these upper pitches should be cello pitches, right? So bum, bum, bum. And this is my screw up again. This should be bass clef. I apologize. I think I was reorganizing things and I just was spacing it out. And then it's a beautiful answer, especially solo violas answering the clarinet solo. Right? This is just a wonderful idea. Yeah. And then you add this harmony on top, and then just a little bit of bassoons and bassoons and violas together. And then the cross voicing with the cellos and so on. It's just a nice idea. It leaves a bit of a gap here, but it's all right. Da 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 da. Bum, 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 bum. I would dovetail this. Just have them end on a 16th note A flat, and just have the slur go all the way to the very last, to the dovetailing note. Yeah, and don't dovetail on the last 16th note. Okay, and it's better to have your second violins dip all the way down, like end on a B flat, semiquaver, 16th note, and then that's when the violas come in. Right? And in fact, you don't even need the violas; just have the cellos dovetail straight in, and you don't need the violas at all. Or you could have the violas. You could go da 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 dum, and right on this E flat is when you have the violas come da 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 da, and then just start right here, cut the cellos here, right, and then just have the cellos start themselves way down here. Now once again we have slurs on top of slurs. You don't need this big old phrase slur. Just put a slur here, da da da, and here you are slurring from note to note. What does that mean? I think you meant the slur to end here. So da da da, and then the slur should end here, right? And just slur. Don't go one past where the end of the beam is, and then start like don't do that like usually. Okay, just have the slur end here, and then have the next one there. All right, and then first ending going to ba da 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 da. Yeah, and then just we're back where we started. And these little dun dun, and I really like this, the little mezzo staccato. Right, and then and then here we have a slight change. I seem to recall that there was some sort of strange harmonic a harmonic error in here that didn't follow the original Beethoven score. So whatever that is, if I'm right about that, please fix that back the way that it was, because the way that you scored this seems to me that if you complied with what Beethoven intended, that you'll be all right. Okay. Anyhow, yeah. So wow, Luvik, just a really fun score, and I gave you a lot of extra time that I usually wouldn't for this short of a fragment of the piece. Don't use the ottava bassa clef on your double basses. I don't know where that comes from, but it is not needed. Everybody knows what the transposition is for double basses, and for contrabassoon for that matter. Don't use it if you see it in contrabassoon. It should never be the default. I'm noticing lots of things being used on defaults for MuseScore. For instance, MuseScore is using the ottava bassa treble clef for concert pitch bass clarinets. And I just wrote a tip about that a couple of weeks ago, or a week ago. So just really try to use the standard. Just use plain old vanilla bass clef with no trimmings for concert pitch bass clarinet. Use just basic standard bass clef for your double basses, and I will look into this and see if that is a MuseScore default, or who is putting that in as a default, and we'll see if we can put a recommendation through the development team. All right, so thank you, Luvik. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. I just want to say, just in generally speaking, nobody has gotten on my case and pressured me or given me any kind of disappointments or anger or impatience or anything about the 2 years that I had to recover. You guys have been just absolutely awesome and supportive and kind and understanding, and I just appreciate it so much, everybody out there, including you, Luvik, who put so much work into this really cool arrangement. I mean, it has so much promise in it. I wish that you had scored the whole movement, as was your due at your support level. It would have been interesting to see how you handled the development section and the move to F minor and then the recapitulation at the end. It would have been so cool. But anyways, you really you showed what you could do. So nice work, and just keep in touch and keep your orchestration going. That's all I can say. And it would be interesting to see where you go from here.